So we're here to tell you a story. It's a classic drama filled with intrigue, anticipation, and also a little bit of tension. And like any good story, there are two central characters. Polarized, come from different sides of the basically place. Now, however, this is a true story, which makes it that much more interesting.
Our story begins not so long ago in a not so far away land, with a young couple standing at the altar about to get married. There they were, nervously watching each other's every move, clutching at a bouquet of emotions: excitement, anticipation, trepidation. And adding to this trepidation was the very esteemed wedding guest list, comprising of very important people in the room.
Now, as Mike had said, is that the whole world is watching. We're talking about presidents, talking about kings all over the world. The difference, however, with this marriage is that this was an arranged marriage, a marriage of convenience. The couple has not taken the time to get to know each other's wants, each other's needs, things they like, they don't like, etc. However, what was very clear is that they needed to be together, and divorce was absolutely not an option.
But despite all of this trepidation, the couple shared one very important thing, and that was hope. Hope for a better life together, hope for partnership, hope for financial abundance, and of course, a hope for a well-adjusted offspring that would be the envy of every family gathering. And so it was really this joint vision of hope that had brought them together more than anything else. And looking around the room at all of the expectant guests and family and friends, the couple knew one very important thing, and that was divorce was never an option.
So let's fast forward to today. And for those that are wondering, our couple is still together, so no need to panic. However, they've had more lows than highs. Again, based about because they just didn't take the time to get to know each other. They also find themselves in a rut that actually they cannot solve their own problems. And what became very clear is that they need marriage counseling. Without marriage counseling, they will literally be at each other's heads.
So our story is, in fact, about all of you. Our metaphoric couple is, of course, black and white South Africa. And our wedding analogy describes the miracle that we experienced in 1994 when we transitioned from apartheid to democracy. And the offspring that we refer to are the fractured and angry so-called Rainbow Nation born post-1994. And nowhere is this anger more apparent than right now in the drama unfolding with the Fees Must Fall saga we see playing out right now. And even though this was a marriage that was cemented, it was cemented by policy and legislation, not by love. We didn't date, we didn't fall in love first. So by any accounts, it was a marriage of convenience, an arranged marriage. And the sad thing is 20 years down the line, it's still not a marriage of love. In fact, if anything, we seem to be moving further away from each other. We're polarizing white and black, driven by two fundamental things: white fear and black expectation. And that chasm in between is fueled by many external factors: the economy, politics, racism, BE, social media, fees must fall, and so on. But fundamentally, it's fueled by one thing, and that is a complete lack of understanding of each other. However, despite all of this, whether we know it or not, we actually are united by a common vision, and that is economic prosperity. Because the truth is that if this doesn't work economically in this country, it doesn't work at all. And as we know, the marriage between black and white in South Africa, divorce is not an option.
So Mike and I, now we're awake, eh? Absolutely.
Yeah.
We should just go straight to the slide, Mike, and just kind of take it from there, man. Yeah. So Mike and I see this play out every day in the business environment, where businesses are just getting together on a transactional basis, right? White business seeks out a black guy and to do a deal, and they don't take the time to get to know each other. Even myself personally, I don't know how many times I've been approached, Sisa, we've got a great deal for you, come, let's do it. It's like, do you know who I am? Do you know my values? Do you know what I want to achieve? So it's very transactional, and in Mike's analogy of marriage, basically, it's a series of one-night stands with never a view to kind of say, how do we look for a long-term path together?
How many one-night stands you had, Sisa?
My wife's in the audience, man. Come on. Man.
Sorry, Mrs. Ntshona. On a positive note, at least we're communicating, albeit behind the safety of social media and computer screens where we can safely vent our anger and frustration. But it can be positive. In other parts of the world that are governed by stringent political correctness, it's often what doesn't get said that does more damage. So at least the conversations are happening.
So what are we doing here? We are certainly not experts at this. We are not marriage counselors. We are not psychologists. We're just simply a black guy and a white guy trying to navigate the way through complex South Africa. We are trying to find ourselves and weave ourselves so that we can walk towards that common goal.
Yes, and Sisa and I mean, I know it looks like we've been together for a long time, but we met about a year ago at a conference. Sisa was one of the speakers, and sitting in the audience, I really resonated with what he said. So I sought him out afterwards with no...
Stalked me. Stalked me. Stalked me, yeah.
I stalked him afterwards. Yeah. With no particular agenda, Sisa, other than to connect. And so we did. And so began a series of many discussions over coffee and a meeting of minds. And as I said, there wasn't a particular agenda, and the important thing was that we didn't connect through an absence of prejudice, but rather through a shared vision for the future.
We often refer to each other as the Seesaw Generation. We're in our mid-40s. Well, some more mid than others, but we're in our mid-40s.
Hang on. You've got more mid than me.
Hey. Well, yours goes up. Serious stuff now.
Okay.
The interesting thing, however, is that we spend half of our lives in apartheid and the other half outside of apartheid. The interesting thing, however, is that our formative years were developed and imprinted during apartheid. There was a time of fear, suspicion, anger, hatred. And that's the time that we formed our own kind of views in life. That's the space we go to when we are threatened, when we are fearful, when we feel vulnerable without even thinking. The thing, however, is that our generation are the people making big decisions of today. We are your teachers. We are your bosses. We run big corporates. We're the CEOs of companies. We make big policies in government, etc. And whenever we are under pressure, we retreat to what we know and what was formed in our early years, and that's apartheid. So essentially, we are using apartheid thinking to solve today's problems when it really matters. Left unchecked, that's a big problem. But remember, we're also very smart people, right? We've got very fancy words that we use. We're saying, well, we are definitely better than our fathers and forefathers, right? We've been to diversity training, right? Everyone's kind of done that. Well, I've got a white friend here and there, I've got a black friend here, so I'm much better. And we've got very good policies that we always talk about, and embracing policy. So we've got the language for it. But when it really, really matters, what do we retract to? we are the people that are probably going to be making big decisions again for the next 20 or so years. And until we check ourselves, our own prejudice will be very much challenged as to how we take this country forward. And if we're not aware of that, we can really screw things up.
There's a lot of marriage analogy going on here. Screw things up, marriage, counseling, one-night stands. Anyway, it was through this meeting of minds that Sisa and I formed what we called a diversity partnership. And it was through that we really started expanding our way of thinking or our way of seeing. We could test each other's thinking. We could test the way we spoke to each other. We could ask the questions we always wanted to ask. Why do black guys do this? Why do white guys do that? And very often, we were able to laugh at the outcome. And that's one of the qualities that South Africans have in abundance, is the ability to laugh. And such an important injection into such a sensitive topic. And one of the things that we've laughed at a few times, and in fact, more so now that we've observed it, is a white guy and a black guy trying to shake hands in South Africa, because both sort of tend to try and adopt each other's method. And shop.
I've been training him for a year, and he still gets it wrong. 1 year, and this is what I get.
It results in this weird hybrid that you just witnessed of hand maneuverings, and both parties kind of leaving it feeling somewhat unfulfilled, like those one-night stands we were talking about.
Absolutely. Although the issue we're talking about here in terms of diversity is on racial lines, the application of it goes far beyond race. We can talk about religion in diversity, diversity in age, diversity in gender, diversity between straight and gay people, basically. And once you start this exercise, you become tolerable, basically, of issues there. And as I say, it extends far beyond just black and white, but starts to kind of give a ripple effect in terms of the other things in life that you're able to embrace.
Yes, and so we really found that this diversity partnership was something potentially more tangible than what we had initially thought as just a racial vehicle. And the important thing through this diversity partnership is that at no point during any of our discussions or our meetings were we required to check our identities in at the door. We could be exactly who we really are. Open up, be vulnerable, be honest, and seek to understand.
So challenging the status quo can be fun, like seriously fun. I tell Mike I still look forward to the day when I invite him over for
I also
our
look
famous,
forward to that day, by the way.
for our famous, Sunday lunches, right? And like any good, respecting family, my grandmother has a set of china and cutlery that we've never, ever eaten from. I mean, I've been married, we've had children, my sister's been married, never ate from there. But I bet you if I bring a white guy home, we'll be winning, yeah.
And because I'm single right now, which isn't an advert, by the way. Actually, maybe it is an advert. I don't know. Can I use this as a dating platform? See, this is TEDx, not Tinder. Come on. Okay. And so because I'm single, throwing it out there that I'm in a diversity partnership is going to start testing some thinking. And if I tell them I'm in a diversity partnership with a guy called Sisa, that thinking's going into overdrive, I can tell you. Some questions going to be asked.
Absolutely. There's a bit of word of caution, however, is that what we have realized is that although we've been on this journey between ourselves, because it requires commitment, and the things that we are able to say in the comfort of crowds and audiences is very different when you're one-on-one. One-on-one is personal. One-on-one allows you to look into someone's eyes. You don't generalize. You don't use words like they, us, and them. You talk about me and you. And once you interact that, it changes your world completely. Now, the caution, however, is that we tend to be a bit more impatient with the people that we love around us, our families, etc., because they haven't been on this journey. And we start questioning a lot, right, about prejudice. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? So it's about just be cautious in terms of understanding that others basically may be a step or two behind in that process.
Absolutely, and in fact, in embracing tolerance, one of the things that Sisa and I have questioned is that if we're expanding our tolerance across different lines of diversity, does that then mean that we should tolerate racism? An interesting question we haven't quite come to the bottom of just yet.
Mike has asked a couple of times, Sisa, can black people be racist? I'm like, of course not, Mike, come on. The jury's still out on that one. So what are we saying here is that find your Sisa, find your Mike, start this journey, be intimate. You'll find that you actually start growing as a person. It is a one-on-one relationship. It is scary initially because you're literally building on trust. You have to make yourself vulnerable. You have to trust, essentially. And you are allowed to ask those stupid questions you've always wanted to ask. But in the safety of your diversity partner, or whoever it is that you find, you can start exploring that as well.
So start with just one person. You know, we live amongst such beautiful diversity in this country, right beside us every day. English, Afrikaans, Zulu, Xhosa.
I have to deal with this.
Colored, Indian. Did I pronounce that right? Indian?
Yes, Indian.
But yet we know so little about each other, which is the crazy thing. So start with just one person. Open yourself up. Be vulnerable. Seek to understand. And you'll soon find that the ripples of this effect will touch all corners of your life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.